Hello, welcome to Signal Noise, brought to you by Market Once, RY Rocket. My name is Brian Lamar. Joining me, Andrew DeSello. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you?
Doing well. I'm looking forward to today's episode, even though we have like no agenda. Those are my favorite ones. This is a continuation of our webinar, which is also a podcast. Highly recommend watching it. I think it's really good. I think we attack the trends in the industry, maybe a little bit different than others. And rather thorough. And, we're going through it. And, normally for webinars, we try to keep them 35, 40 minutes and then take questions as long as it takes. And I remember, we have 4 trends and, some decent summary discussion at the end. And we really only got through 2.5 trends. I was looking at the clock at like 45 minutes in. I'm like, oh my gosh, we hadn't even started talking really about all the stuff I wanted to. So this is really following for the webinar. Bonus coverage on the webinar.
Love that.
Yeah, so for those of you that did not watch the webinar, we went through some trends. The first one being capital.
Lots of capital with
what's going on in the capital world, which was really interesting. Then we went through quality, which is a standard topic. We actually didn't go too deep into quality, but the quality crisis, called the breaking point, is the trend number 2. The third, AI. You can't talk about trends in the industry without talking about AI.
AI. Like we're going
as a disruptor. And then where we didn't spend enough time on, I don't think, was how the convergence of these 3 trends are leading to a methodology reframe, or part of the reason why there's a methodology reframe. And I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's worth it because it's really kind of the thesis of that trends webinar, right? We're definitely seeing a lot of innovation, new startups, new tools, and from our kind of, bona fide, rigorous agency partners, we're seeing testing of new methodologies. A lot of the companies that Capital is deploying into our space are AI moderated, qualitative interviewers, or their AI adaptive open ends, chat interface surveys. There's new types of research being done by startup tools. Typically, they are AI fueled. And kind of, the point that we're trying to drive home is that these 4 things, capital, artificial intelligence, data quality crisis, and of course, the blurring of methodologies, new tools, they're not 4 things that are happening in silos, but rather, we're seeing these new methodologies in these new tools are being developed with capital and with artificial intelligence in response to the data quality crisis. And that's really what I think is happening, is that we're at an inflection point where, we've seen this data quality trend line becoming more and more acute over probably the last decade. There's always been capital in our space. It's really been kind of ramping up in the last 3 to 4 years. Artificial intelligence obviously has been on the scene for about 5 years. And right now, we're just really in the last quarter, Brian. All of these things are converging to really kind of make this concerted push towards non-traditional methodologies that lend themselves to higher quality data in and of themselves, in and of the way that it is engaging with respondents in ways that are now more accessible, more economical, and more operationally feasible because of all of this startup activity. And so that's kind of the too long don't read of the entire webinar.
Yeah, very good. I don't know if I was with you. I was talking to somebody last week, and we've had limitations because of lots of challenges we've had in our space. But I think with qualitative, I learned something last week that I thought was interesting. That with either qualitative follow-up from a quantitative test or a traditional qual, we've been limited by scheduling. So let's say you're the perfect respondent and you qualify to do an hour-long IDI, right?
Yep.
Well, then you got to find this calendar and you pick a time, when's available for both you and the interviewer, etc. And that's one of the limitations of really qualitative research in general, is that you have to have a human being talking to another human being and you have to coordinate schedules. And one of the benefits that with AI moderated assuming the quality is as good or close to as good, you can do the interview anytime you want. So if I'm qualified for an hour-long IDI, instead of trying to align with a moderator schedule, I can align with my schedule any point I want to. If I want to do it at midnight tonight, I can do it. I can do it right now. I can do it at any point. There's no limitations. I can do it on a Sunday morning. Most live moderators are probably not going to do an interview on a Sunday morning, right?
Right.
You don't have to worry about time zones. And that's such, I think, a unique advantage. And, they promote you can do hundreds of interviews, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that the bigger advantage is the flexibility of ensuring anyone that qualifies will have the interview completed.
Right. And yeah, and I really want to emphasize that, I don't think it's our official point of view that AI moderated qualitative, like we really shouldn't even call it that, right? It
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
AI led interview, or
Yes.
AI led conversational interview. And we don't have to go down that rabbit hole right now. But I think that you're right that as long as the information that you're getting is useful enough to answer the business question, having the ability to do this so that you can, like you said, kind of collect async,
Yep.
or even better, at the convenience of the respondent. If we're able to do it, not just, hey, right now you have to take it, which would have a higher conversion rate than having to further schedule. But
Yeah.
even if you can say, hey, anytime in the next 3 days, you can come back and take this. It first of all, it makes it much more efficient from a sampling perspective, which lowers
Yeah.
cost per recruit. I know we literally charge less if that's how it's set up. But also on the other end, it gives these high premium, high value respondents who are willing to participate in qualitative, who are maybe B2B, maybe healthcare, right? It gives them more opportunities to convert that survey screening experience into a large incentive for participating in these types of things. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's good for panel health as well. So it's one of these innovations that I think over time is going to really sort of help us like heal the data quality problem, because it works on both sides, where if you're not who you say you are, and or you're maybe even just kind of like not a great fit, much less you're a total fraudulent respondent, like we're going to be able to catch that in the video transcript of an AI led conversational interview. On the flip side, we're also providing a better respondent experience, right? So these things
Yeah.
kind of go hand in hand. And honestly, I think that advent of it's not even quality quant, but just this advent of more transparent, more in-depth research tools is going to work from both angles to really kind of attack this quality crisis.
Absolutely. And, I think that the research, again, in theory, can be better, mostly because of efficiency gains. And if you're giving someone an opportunity to take the interview whenever they want, perhaps there might be in a different mental space than, the only time available, I'm going to be half cooking dinner or blah, blah, blah. Now you can kind of really do it on your own time and you can be in a better mental space and perhaps you're a better respondent that way. Perhaps also you're more in context. And I think when we're doing a lot of these interviews, especially when we're doing more UX kind of stuff, like, hey, I want to do an IDI and I want you to show me how you're doing laundry.
Mm,
So for 45 minutes, walk me through the process of doing a load of laundry and whatever technology we're using, let's just call it like FaceTime that you're showing video of yourself doing laundry. Imagine the AI that can analyze that background and that nonverbal things that are happening and put that in context to reach the objectives of the research. Like that's going to be pretty amazing, I think. Where before that was a human being. Human
mhm.
being had to watch these videos and probably pause and rewind, and that's expensive. And hopefully AI can really do a lot of those things and let the moderator really get the summary and add their expertise to it and the insights to it and collect all that information that AI is going to be far away from doing. Add that to it instead of just watching videos. So it's, some different things. We listed or I listed in this deck a few different called the new research playbook, and I called it AI moderated qual, which that term will be going away hopefully soon. Like you mentioned, synthetic respondents. We've talked a lot about that. passive behavioral intelligence, which is something that the industry has just demanded forever. I think we're going to have a lot more insight into that, which is going to be a ton of value. Always on communities, which I love, similar to the qualitative, whenever you want to do the IDI or the focus group or whenever, always on communities is kind of cool. And then I'd love your thoughts on this one. Agentic research assistants. I mean, that's going to happen soon, you would expect, right? AI agents that design or clean or analyze, report end to end, triggered by just a business question. That you have agents that are trained researchers and can do a lot of the tasks that we do. That's I don't think that's far away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's dive in there a little bit, because there's a couple things to bring up. The first kind of being, do we need an agent, right? Agent is a buzzword right now. So let's define it. An AI agent is a tool that is really what it is it's operating in a workflow. Because we don't actually have you know AIs that are like preserving a memory chain of an experience and moving from task to task as like a single entity. The way that this actually works is that they're operating in a workflow. There might be an orchestrator LLM that's kind of planning out that workflow, but then there are individual skills, individual operators within it that are kind of working in an assembly line. So, yes, I think agentic research assistants are definitely coming. I think workflows make sense. But right now, before we even kind of get into the agents, before we get into the workflows, I have yet to see, I've seen some pretty good stuff, but building individual artificially intelligent tools for like particular subsets of the research process and really, really nailing that down before we go agentic is kind of the next thing that I'm looking to see. Is there a questionnaire design tool that produces something that is 95% as good as if it had been done by a researcher? I think we've had some that are able to do it 70, 75, 80% as good for a long time, quite frankly. I think a couple years, if we're being honest. But that 20% gap in quality when we're producing something that's essentially a scientific instrument, it is kind of an unacceptable gap, right? I think the same thing happens when we look at like a data cleaning AI tool. You know, they either throw out everything or
Yeah.
nothing, and a lot of the nuance is really lost. Same thing with data analysis, right? The edge cases are where the insights typically lie. And a lot of times these artificially intelligent analysis tools are going to really focus on, not the outliers, not where the unique insights, the novel insights, if you will, to use model council language, the way that the LLMs interact with one another. I think we're looking for a step change in the individual capabilities before we start to kind of build these assembly lines where you can say to, research bot V14, hey, I'm wondering what the customer segments are for my brand. And boom, a deck is returned 5 days later. I
Yeah.
think we're a really, really long way off from that just because we have to nail down the steps in between. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just think with how I don't know, I just think the last 6 months of innovation among AI is just astounds me. It's progressing so fast. Nothing will surprise me about into this year, I don't think.
I agree with you. But I think that, we're not going to see these tools developed as a product that you can go buy.
Yeah,
You're going to see market research agencies developing them from
yeah,
existing products. So what do I
yeah,
mean? I don't think that Decipher or Qualtrics or someone like that is going to be able to produce a agentic research bot or even a survey drafting bot or even a data analysis bot. Data analysis, we can probably get pretty close, but some of those others, they're not going to come from there. They're going to come from the research agencies. And here's why:
yes,
because they own the data necessary to train and refine the skills of the models. And regardless of whether or not it would be like programmatically possible for someone else to do it, there's differentiation between the agencies, which makes it inherently less useful to buy that from someone else. Client A has a different way of asking a certain question than client B, and client C favors a methodology or maybe a flavor of that methodology different than client D. And that's why the brands are going to different agencies. And so out of the box right now, the compute processing power, the complexity, the ability to learn, the ability to RAG large databases, the ability to create layered databases, layered skills, networks, and workflows of all of these different types of things so that you can ask the tool to do something, to do it exactly as you would like to. That all exists today. The question
Right.
is whether or not the agencies are spending and I'll be honest, incredible amount of time
Right.
to index the thousands of questionnaires they have, the thousands of reports that they've produced, the raw and then cleaned data files, hopefully with removal reasons, right? And they've got to dump all of that into these tools, have it surface novel insights, have it find context, have it make inferences. They have to derive instruction patterns. They have to derive
Yeah.
files. They have to derive skill files of how to use the skill files. Then they have to do the agentic workflows, right? You could do all of that today, but it would take a long, long, long time by someone who really, really knows how to use all these AI tools. And I think we're going to see the quality implementation of those types of workflows come out as proprietary AI tools from really rigorous market research agencies, not as a product from a software company. And I think that inherent gap between the quality of what would be produced with the idiosyncrasies of how the agencies work, as well as with the accuracy of that proprietary data, will make an AI end-to-end research agent not produced in-house by an agency inherently less useful, because who are they going to sell it to? The agencies can
Yeah.
do a better job on their own, right? So could the brands if they have in-house research. So that's really where I kind of see it going, especially given that that capability exists today, if the time and
Yeah.
resources were invested to build it. Again, I could be wrong, but that's
Look.
where I see AI going, is that over the next quarter or two, aggressive adopters of artificial intelligence within the agencies and consulting spaces are going to build workflows, and they're going to build databases that are able to produce some really, really powerful results. We don't need more AI innovation to do it. We need the blood, sweat, tears, and elbow
Yep.
of agencies to build all this stuff out. And that's where the next step change in automated research is going to come from.
And I agree. I mean, just after talking to companies about challenges they face, the current climate of research, I think that the majority of, maybe not the majority, a large proportion of their current challenges can be fixed using agents. And if I worked at a company that had the ability to do so, I would be working my butt off, the blood, sweat, and tears, like you said, to create these agents and workflows so that my research team would have teams of them would have additional teams doing a lot of that stuff. If you could, I mean, I can't imagine how much time you'd save. It'd be like quadrupling your work staff if you did it right.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then the researchers who, at least a lot of them that we know, that should be delivering results to clients, should be analyzing results and thinking outside the box about additional research and consulting with clients and delivering on business questions. A lot of their time is spent on, at least from our perspective, we only see a piece of the pie on data quality questions and
Mhm.
sampling challenges, and those types of things can take so much time. If you can remove 75% of that, I mean, you just hired a whole staff. And so I'm thinking people are working on this today, piece by piece, and maybe you get the coding part done first, and you get some cool, maybe some data quality. I mean, we know some people are working on some data quality stuff, algorithms and
Mhm.
efficiencies, both in survey, post survey. That's kind of exciting in some ways.
Absolutely
Uh,
is.
that hopefully the researchers can focus on the research.
Mhm.
We and maybe I don't know. I'd love to hear from other people. Maybe we are biased because we work in sampling and we're so consultative, like you and I. We're talking to clients about their problems, so this is kind of a self-serving prophecy, right? That they're talking to us because they have problems. They're talking to us because they need help with sampling. They're talking to us because they value our expertise in data quality and sampling and methodology. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens by end. I mean, we're in May, mid-May, so the end of the year is not that far away. I'm excited to see what happens by the end of the year. If will companies go public if they do this? They may not. If
Yeah.
who's going to say we've built an agentic team of researchers that are experts and they probably can't go public because they're going to get pushback from clients, right? They're already getting pushback from clients, and so that's probably one of the bigger challenges that the full service firms, the consultancies are facing is we want to build this, but our client doesn't want us to build it based upon their data, and so you've got to try to figure out how to do that either by some really intense anonymization and blinding and removing PII and removing anything that's not their property, and that's got to be really hard. That's the blood, sweat, and tears you're talking about. It's not just manually figuring out the code and the workflows. It's you got to anonymize all that stuff. That's hard. So they may not go public with it, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you mentioned there. The first one I want to comment on is you kind of said, like, oh, are we biased because we're assuming that there will be a move away from operational work to more consultative and strategic work, assuming that that is what brands want.
Yeah,
Agencies and consultancies will do that. I think there's no avoiding that.
yeah,
As process-based work, more operational, more task-based, repetitive work becomes automatable and let's be clear, like artificial intelligence can do this stuff today. It's whether or not we've had the time to
yeah,
implement it, and then whether or not there's actually a cost efficiency to do so. Uh,
right.
the major frontier model companies are investing $800 billion into compute this year. Elon's on board building more Colossus kind of stuff. Google's investing more. The cost of tokens will go down. This stuff will continue to get more and more powerful. And there will be an expectation that research work shifts more towards expertise, more
Yes,
strategic insights being provided. I think that is completely unavoidable. And frankly, I think it's for the best. I think people
yeah,
are going to like you're not going to see oh my gosh, we have to lay off half of our staff and research costs half as much.
right.
This is horrible. Like no, we're going to be able to provide more value. We're going to be able to spend more time doing the things that are actually rewarding. And I think when we do that and we elevate the end result of the product, brands will buy more market research because it will be
Yes,
powerful, right? So I want to be clear about that I don't think it's a bias towards being consultative and towards strategy. I do think that that is an absolutely inevitable shift. The second piece that you were talking about when you were saying, is it like something that you would kind of go public with, like, hey, we figured this out? Uh,
right.
come with no, I don't think that it's like a PR thing where you kind of announce like, hey, we've done this. Come use our AI research team. Because I think when you do that, at least right now, there is this inherent, well, where's my discount? How much worse will this be
Yeah, yeah,
to it? Right. And I don't think that it would make sense for someone to do that. However, when scoping a project with a client, so with like a prospective brand research, when you have those tools and going through specifically with that prospective client, here's where we use artificial intelligence. Here's where the human is in the loop. And by the way, the human in the loop used to have four people reporting to them and eight junior people reporting to them. And now we can have this person with 25 years of experience utilizing our agentic workflow pipeline, so on and so forth. And so we're able to provide a higher quality product to you faster through our, use of artificial intelligence, by the way, for the same price or maybe even for a higher price, right? If we're able to do better quality work in less time, I think that would demand a premium. The market is kind of trying to sort all of that out right now. But ultimately, I think that the firms who are able to extract more value for their clients in tighter timelines by using artificial intelligence are definitely going to demand a premium over those who use it to commoditize. I think that'll,
Yeah.
it's just not going to make sense because the barbell effect between the high quality research that can be done with artificial intelligence versus the commoditized cheap stuff is just going to create a valley in between, even more so than there already exists today.
We had for the second time, gosh, we should just do a whole podcast series on trends because we just talked what, I don't know, 20 minutes on that one topic, and I wanted to talk about new skills that are required in the future.
Hmm.
And I thought about that from a more methodological standpoint, where quantitative researchers need to learn more qual and vice versa, et cetera, and maybe even the lines have blurred, but from some people, it's still like a pretty heavy line. I'd like to talk about deployment of all this somehow. I'd love to talk about maybe where the disruption narrative gets things wrong. I've got some ideas on that. Some other takeaways. I mean, those are four pretty big topics. Where do you want to go right now?
Hmm.
What about what the disruption narrative gets wrong?
Let's do that. I think for to round out this episode, let's talk about what the disruption narrative gets wrong, because that kind of ties into what we were just talking about, right?
Yes.
Where I was saying, oh, well, it'll command a premium. Okay, well, that's kind of anti-disruption narrative, right? So on and so forth. So let's do that. We'll finish out this episode where it gets wrong, and then let's do a deep dive episode on some of these skills.
Yes.
And we can talk specifically about like AI skills and tools and so on and so forth. So what do you think is the main thing the disruption narrative gets wrong, Brian?
I had a bunch of things listed. I think I don't even know where to start. I don't know what the biggest number one thing is. And there's a lot of things. How about I'll start off with this? We still need a to prove out synthetic. That's a big step we need to occur. That someone needs to go public with here's a use case where we use synthetic. It's better than humans. Here's the decision we made. Better research, validated. That hasn't been done yet. We need that.
Can you be really clear on what you mean by synthetic in that context?
Doing research among non-human beings using some sort of synthetic methodology, whether it's digital twins, whether it's personas, whether it's simulated human data, which is what we're partnering with Edge on, that someone has done some sort of A/B test with humans versus synthetic, and synthetic provided more value, or as that's not the comparison point. Maybe the benchmark is as good as the insights and the takeaways from it. We need that. I haven't seen it. There are people out there that are, as soon as it happens, this is going to be pretty loud in the marketplace. That's one thing that I wanted to mention. Another narrative I think is I don't think synthetic respondents are replacing panels. I'm not sure if this is really a narrative. I don't think that's replacing panels. I think they're dependent upon panels and they're dependent upon the human being. I'm sure we agree on this. I think the value of real human beings is going to go up as synthetic grows. As regardless, there has to be humans in the loop. There has to be humans training the models. There has to be humans validating things. And I think that the good panels should feel bullish about synthetic, whether you're invested in it or not. I don't know if that's where a narrative gets wrong, but I feel strongly about that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a point that we made. I think it was in episode 4 of Signal and Noise, right? Like last summer that we talked about how what's really going to happen if we can get synthetic right enough is that synthetic sample will replace all the, pardon my French, all the bullshit sample that's getting
Yeah.
pulled around at 15-cent incentives and it's non-verified and it's all intercept and half of them are freaking click farms or bots. That's going to go away. That's the bot versus the bot that you don't. And I would guess total throwing a dart at a wall, that's like 40% of what's getting pumped around the ecosystem these days.
Yeah.
And that's going to go away. It's going to be replaced by synthetic. And then for those higher risk decisions, for those quality quant methodologies, all of the real respondents and the real panels are going to be able to command a premium. And I think that the best thing about that is that the value of them and the difference in quality is going to become more apparent. And I apologize for using the same like analytical term within 5 minutes in two different contexts. But when we talked about that last summer, we called it that barbell effect again, right? And I really think that that's what we're going to see in sampling, and it'll be better for everyone. You're talking about the quality crisis, like higher incentives, better methodologies, better UX, better respondent experience, better targeting so that people can qualify for things more, right? We do not need to quadruple sample prices in order to provide an experience to respondents so that they don't stop taking the surveys. It's like a 50% increase. And then all of a sudden, it's apparent that, like, hey, we're using synthetic for this because it's low risk or it's quick turn or because synthetic is really good for message testing or something like that.
Yeah.
This we're doing a segmentation. We want to buy verified human respondents for this, or it's a brand tracker, right? So we want to be talking to people who are living real world experiences and see what they're thinking. That differentiation, rather than all samples sort of just being on this spectrum, I think will actually lend itself to better quality overall as dollars move towards higher quality panels. And that will in turn kind of heal the entire ecosystem as respondents have access to better surveys and higher incentives.
I'll go through three others that I had and see which ones you want to react to. Talked a little bit about this. The loudest companies in the industry don't represent the industry. Sometimes you can follow LinkedIn and go to a conference and, oh gosh, the industry is leaving it behind. I don't think that's the case. I think the traditional research firms are still really the
Mhm,
traditional research firms. They deserve to be so. Even though there may not be on the main stage at every conference, the names that you know are the ones that are really leading the industry.
mhm.
Next is qualitative is not going to die. In fact, it's probably becoming a differentiator. I think that a true quantitative study has to evolve to include some sort of qualitative function.
Yeah,
The thing that,
I can just underline that one right now before you move.
yeah,
And I think that the advent of quali-quant cannibalizes quant, not qual. I think
yes,
that people who are doing really in-depth qualitative research and those who are buying it where they need real deep emotional insight and truly novel discoveries, they already know this, and they're going to pay highly trained moderators to do actually in-depth research with real human beings. I think that the quali quant cannibalizes quant budgets, not qual budgets. I feel pretty
yeah.
strong about that.
The
Unless the tools make a full step change, I don't think that we're going to see it.
well, the thing that might become more scarcer and more valuable is the genuine like human depth.
Hmm.
And so that's to me that's a key differentiator. Last one, trust. The trust problem we have in the industry, which is well documented, will not be solved by more technology. We have a culture problem in our industry around trust. All these new platforms aren't going to fix it. And in fact, some of these platforms may be making it worse. A lot of new companies out there making claims that aren't validated. More technology deployed into a low trust environment produces lower quality decisions just at a higher speed.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's one I really feel strong about is technology is not going to get us out of this trust or this data quality challenge we have. It's going to take some hard work and some money and tough love.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree with you. And we always used to say sample's kind of a jungle, right? Just from the number of panels that are available. And you and I have kind of like cut our teeth and made our name on being able to navigate that. And as new
Yeah.
tools and technologies and new platforms become more and more abundant, the same thing will apply. Firms, brands, everyone along the way is going to need expert help in navigating all of this stuff. And the fact that there's not a clear answer, a clear combination of answers, or like a quote unquote best in class best way to do it, it's antithetical to the way that market researchers think because there's a right way to like scientifically do something. And that's what makes all of this so difficult and why there is such a trust problem is that if you go study market research, like a long time ago, well, maybe not so long ago, but at its roots, market research is like a scientific discipline.
Yeah.
And it's almost academic in nature, and there's rigor involved, and there's a right way and wrong way to do things. And we've really kind of become permeated by like a corporate marketing function culture. I don't think I'm saying that right, but The fact that it's not, okay, I'm going to use this tool, I'm going to use this platform. What's the right way to clean for programmatic fraud? What's the right way to remove someone for an open end? And again, just the way that we think, there should be a right answer, and there's not. And that's kind of where the dissonance occurs that creates the lack of trust, but it also creates the space into which an expert can step to provide additional value and to provide that consultation. So it's a kind of a catch-22, like you said, around the trust problem in the space. But I do think that, like you said, with some tough love, with some time, with some money, um, ultimately we'll be able to really kind of improve what's going on here.
Yeah.
It accelerates our ability to process large amounts of data, to discover problems, to solve problems. And we're going to start cleaning all this stuff up, right? Because everyone basically just got superpowers at the end of the day. And so being able to dive into that and analyze all of these types of things in hours that would have previously taken months, and especially being able to do that on top of the day-to-day work, we're going to start solving a lot of these problems pretty quickly.
Yeah. We should have done a 3-hour webinar. I don't know what I was thinking, putting together all these trends and trying to fit it into 40 minutes. That was ridiculous.
Signal and Noise Summit. We'll do a conference next year. Let's do it.
Yeah, there we go. Well, thanks for joining. I know you're on the verge of getting married. Your time is valuable, so I appreciate you joining and putting some of your whatever brain ability you have left towards this.
I appreciate that, because it definitely feels like there's smoke coming out of my ears these days. So,
well, thank you for joining, and thanks for listening, everybody. If you have any thoughts on this, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on. We'll talk more about these trends in the upcoming episodes, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.